Yeah, I mean, I have my whole life so
I said we were free rock.
but it's not mandatory. But I'm way want to go, right? Yeah. What else? There was good discussion in the end. Like,
Yeah.
the conversation. They were pretty invested in our
Like,
design.
I know you.
Can you put your seat down a little bit? Because you're blocking my
Voilà.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, thanks. Amazing.
Nice way of saying hi.
I said hi. Me too. Very nice. I'm doing a detox right now. No Red Bull right now.
Just coffee in my house. Maybe like an hour. So like 15 minutes.
Ciao grandissimo. Weapon. You good weapon? Hey weapon.
Ou le métro, en fait, tu prends la ouais, d'accord.
For the trends, how's life today?
But isn't Halloween done?
Mais j'ai
Toughies are the ones who put in the
Like the sexy one with the fur. Pink one.
Sit over there. Yasmina, t'as fait un désordre.
And marketing is like,
Le pauvre là.
oh man.
It's a lot better than
DSA, Mr. Max is gonna make this on this.
Have you done it?
Here, I found this. It literally would be like, it's like, oh, this question is gonna be very
So, shall we get started? Next week. Welcome to the decision risk analysis. Let me try to explain what this course is about using a very simple toy example. Assume a firm's return on investment, ROI, is decided by a fidget spinner. Something like this here, with 5 equally likely outcomes, ranging from minus 100%, that means the firm loses everything, total car crash, to magically 300% return on investment. So imagine this scenario here. I would like you first to think about the following trend. What is the average ROI and its distribution if a firm bets its entire $100,000 capital on a single customer? So just one spin on this fidget spinner, and I want you to think about what is the average and what is the distribution we get if we use this little toy here to determine the company's return on investment. Let's start perhaps with the second question. Its distribution. What do you think how it's distributed? Yeah. The second, let's start with the second one.
Is it distributed equally?
Distributed equally. How does it look like? Is it kind of a line? Is it kind of a bar? So
Well, what's on the axis?
good point. I should have mentioned it. These are the axes, the likelihood, the probabilities, and the 5 possible scenario outcomes.
Then it would be straight.
A straight line, close. It is actually, we have here discrete outcomes. You can get either minus 100%, 0%, 100%, 203%. So it's only 5 discrete outcomes. And in this case, we tend to plot distribution for as kind of a line or as a bar. all the things. And what is the average of this one? Easy one. 250?
I mean, it's 100 plus 100. I'm so sorry, no. That's not the answer.
So what's the health package? 100%. Yes, very easy. Because 0.2 times minus 100, 0.2 plus 0, and so on and so forth. Alternatively, add them all up and divide by 5. You had this probably done in the data analytics course. More interesting is the second question. More interesting is the second question. What is the average ROI and its distribution if a firm sets its entire $100,000 capital equally on 10,000 customers? So it's 10,000 spins. What is the average and what is the distribution in this second business proposition? Think about it a bit. Any ideas? So Louise, what do you think? What's the average? Let's start with the average.
As well, 100%.
It is 100%, yes, because we have just many small bets now, and each of them has an expected value of 100%, so the sum is also 100%. And the distribution? Yeah.
Since the sample size is very large, it is going to tend to become a normal.
Yes, the normal distribution. Can you describe it a little bit more if you look at this range? It doesn't look like this, so how wide is it?
It's not going to be too wide. It's going to be precise towards the tails because you have 10,000 samples, and the peak will be again at like 100%, which is also the median and the average.
Yes, it will probably look something this year. Or I did on the next slide a simulation. You don't trust me, you're basically 90% certain that your ROI will be between 97.5% and 102.3%. So it is very narrow distribution. Now, why do I explain all this? So we see here two investment opportunities which have equal average, but clearly they are not equally attractive. If we have many repeat transactions, then we know that the risk, the uncertainty gets simply diversified away. We talked about this extensively in the finance literature, and as was mentioned also in the data analytics lecture, you talked about it under the banner of law of averages or law of large numbers. However, many business decisions, especially those which involving large amounts of money, and you need to think hard what we are doing, are more of the former type. That means one spin only, and clearly in those cases, the spread of the risk, the spread of the uncertainty around the average matters. Especially those given that most decision makers are risk averse. That means a loss they might occur hurts them more than they would appreciate an equal amount of gain instead. So, given that, the purpose of this course is to help you to understand a little bit more what does it mean that a decision involves risk, and more importantly, to introduce you to some methods and techniques to quantify the risk when making big investment decisions. Now, the quantification was very easy here, and you managed to provide the answers. The problem is, most business decisions are not fidget spinners. Most business decisions are way more complicated. They tend to look more like that. There are lots of things going on in a firm, lots of departments, people working together to achieve the objectives. And which results in what the ROI of the firm is, or whether an investment succeeds or fails. And trying to capture all this stuff with a single risk analysis is simply too complicated. The real world is too complicated to capture it perfectly. So what we do instead in risk analysis, we simplify the problem. We pick only the key determinants which drive the uncertainty, which drives the outcome we will achieve. And these key determinants, we try to capture them in a simple model, trying to add mathematical relationships, how they all fit together. And then we study this model we have created. So we explored, think what is the best way forward given our simple model. And given that we worked hard that this simple model represents the real world, consequently, the model's recommendation should be also the right one when we make an actual business decision. So that's the general approach in this module. And we will discuss two types of such models. The first one I would simply call Excel models, but they include also techniques like scenario analysis, activity analysis, and simulations. And these kind of spreadsheet models we will discuss in lectures 1 and 2. And lecture 4 and 5 we will dive into a different type of models called decision trees. These are useful when we don't make all the investment decision right at the beginning, put all the money on the line, but rather can make stage decisions. And there, the risk analysis works slightly different, and we will discuss it in lecture 4 and 5. Now, in terms of the structure of this course, so we have 2 lectures. Then we have an online seminar, which is on Thursday and Friday, which is run by Marius, who is somewhere here, but I think you're already familiar with him. As there he is, and back. And there is a little bit uncertainty. The Thursday seminar will get a new time slot, I believe. So it's going to be 2 to 3. It might be 4 to 5 from what I've heard. And the Friday seminar is as scheduled. And I suggest, so that we balance the numbers out a little bit, that maybe those who come with, who last time starts with A to L, go to the first seminar, and those with M to Z to the second seminar. Just a suggestion, but not compulsory. We can only come to one of them. Of course, come whatever your last name is. And in the second part, a homework, which it will be also available on Canvas directly after this lecture, and is due on the 7th November. It should be, so in 1 week's time, should be quite straightforward. 50 marks are available for your whole total mark in this module. Between 12, 13, or 14, 15 marks. So it should be quite easy. And then there is what I would call perhaps lecture 3 or the group assignment. You will work in your study group and will write a 3-page management report on a particular case, which I will give you. And a couple of weeks later, you will get a mark back, depending on how well it's written. I will say more about that at the end of the next lecture. And lectures 4 and 5 have similar structure, online seminar and homework after the first lecture. Then comes online revision on the 28th November, which is either Chiara or Marius will do with you. So you will go through some past exam papers, talking about exams. The fun at the end, worth 40% of the total grade. It is a 2-hour closed book test, but it will only be on decision trees. All right, so much for housekeeping. Let's do one more motivational slide. I think that you will be most likely to come across the kind of risk analysis we do in this course the first time when you need to put together a business case. Either you are writing this business case or you're part of the team. And these business cases are fairly standard management documents, which have typically a structure like background and reasons why you want to make a particular investment decision, the option you consider, the time scale, and crucially, what does the stuff cost, and what are the benefits of whatever proposal you have in mind. Now, higher up management, which grants resources for projects in organizations, or if you want to have money from the bank or from venture capitalists, they like all the wordy stuff you write of how great your business idea is. But what they really like is if you can quantify the costs, but not only the costs, but also the benefits of your idea. And that is often quite difficult. Think, for example, you want to make the case to buy for the company a new HR IT system. Sounds exciting, which helps to streamline administrative processes. The costs we kind of get. There's a license fee to be paid, and there's IT stuff which needs to work a long time until this IT system is ready to work. But the benefits? Well, streamlining administrative processes sounds like we can fire some stuff, or make the headcount in HR a little bit smaller, so we can need to pay less for our workforce, so there's some savings. But the problem is, we haven't bought this IT system yet, and we are not really quite sure how effective it will be. It takes time to find out. So the best what we can really provide for these benefits are some best guesses. And these best guesses come with uncertainty. Now, if higher up management sees this business case and just sees one number, they're wondering if you just really make up good numbers because you are the responsible for this new IT system and you really want it because you are head of HR, or have you really thought about the pros and cons of this and have considered the uncertainty? Maybe it's not as efficient as you thought. Maybe there are problems with the vendor of the IT system. You need to buy a new one afterwards. So it's about quantifying the uncertainty in a business case, what this lecture is about. Now, talking about uncertainty in business cases, you had one business case which you already at least read what it was about, Eagle Airlines. Who of you managed to have a look at it and can perhaps say a little bit what was this problem about, what was written in this case? Yeah?
Yeah, the business in mind is to buy a new plane. I mean, considering to buy a new plane.
Yes.
And then he's unsure because of like the good scenarios and the bad scenarios.
Yes, a Piper Chieftain, that's a new plane, looks like this, he wants to buy. And he has already, or the company, Eagle Airlines, has already 3 planes, but an opportunity comes for a 4th one because they want to expand in the business of charter flights, which are more profitable. Remember, they do both scheduled flights and charter flights in Southern Australia, small regional provider. And in this case, there were a couple of facts mentioned. The first thing is, what is the objective of Eagle Airlines? What does it want to achieve by buying this Piper Chieftain? Well, it was clearly said they want to make sure that the 5-year net present value is positive. So the objective we often call also in management a key performance indicator or a KPI. But there were a couple of constraints to consider as well, or considerations, which we can either call parameters, some call them decision variables. I will use here in this course simply the term key performance driver. And that included the plane cost 600,000 Australian dollars, but there was a story about tax depreciation. Remember, when you for tax purposes, you don't need to deduct necessarily all the costs right at the beginning. Often you're not even allowed to. But you need to take into account the plane reduces its value in the books every year by a certain amount. And we know every year it's 120,000 Australian dollars less worth according to tax purposes or accounting purposes. Then there were other variables, how often a plane will be in the air over the year, 10 passengers, a quite small one, annual fixed cost, operating costs. As I said, it's 40% consisting of charters, the rest is scheduled flights. Then there was the thing about the occupancy rate. 60%, so only 6 out of 10 seats are usually sold on each scheduled flight. Not great, but that's what we need to deal with. And lastly, taxes are due 33%, and after all of this, there is the cost of capital, which is basically alternative investment, 15%. This company is doing really well if it has such great alternatives to invest its money in. All right, so you knew all of that, of course, because you all read the business case. And what I would like you to do now is to implement this in Excel. So assume these base case scenarios, Keith's best guesses, and with your neighbor, try to use Excel. And on Canvas, I have uploaded an Excel template called Eagle Airlines Template 1, which should help you to fill out and do the calculations. So it looks like this here. You first need to provide KPD, key performance indicators, and then some Excel functions will be needed. And to help you a bit, this. And to help you a little bit, I have already written here what kind of numbers you should come up with in Excel. But of course, don't just copy paste the numbers, that's pointless. I want the Excel function. Try to implement that in Excel. That's the objective here. So just to make it used how to build those business. About 15 minutes thereabout.
Yeah.
Do you want to do this together? Are you finding it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's there now. Thanks. There's no point of even doing that. I can send you the link. Yeah, I want to get started with this. Yeah, it's not against using your latent.
How do we know that?
Number of seats.
Yeah. After that, yeah, that's the once. Yeah. Hours. 805 hours. So 805 hours now. 800. That's for you, right? Yeah, charter price per hour, right?
5 days. All the operating costs per hour you fly with variable cost. You agree?
Oh, yeah, okay.
800 is the base case right now.
Occupancy, yeah, that's 60% as well. Operating cost per hour is 1.
Number of seats is
Per hour.
And
Ticket price.
annual
Charter
flights.
flights.
In order to calculate
Per hour, right?
we'll just schedule
Flight
flights
utilization
here.
is
0.6 into 240 per hour.
60%.
And so we after the calculation,
See, scheduled flights, 60% charter, 40%. This is like
number of seats is
1200 per hour, right?
that's us schedule. So you don't have to take into consideration this 800
I would argue that makes sense.
Yes. So you don't
Yes, this extra can wait.
Yeah, I think that's
Why was different schedule than chart? Schedule is like just if you fly to Paris now. Tourism company charge provider sell the you get the set amount and they sell the tickets. You know what I mean? And the charter flight is 1900 per hour. I take the hours flown times the ticket price per hour times the purchase price I take 800 hours are
and then you check it from there.
schedule fluctuation, yes. I do like fly 800 hours. These 800 hours, 60% are scheduled flights. And these scheduled flights are 60% fully booked, which means we times the $240 dollars per hour ticket times 10 because that's what we numbers right?
It's supposed to calculate all this.
Maybe it's already been when they just did one night schedule they share schedule right? 40%? Because it's 60% we use charter flights.
C'est juste le pourcentage de schedule.
Operating costs, the whole hour.
We just discounted
Charter price per hour.
That's the beginning of the year. Like beginning of
Because it's an expansion.
Okay, but not that's the dot, yeah. Income from charter.
This
Non, non, parce que regarde, le schedule like 60% of our flights.
Charter price per hour.
We agree?
Okay, so the 160 is if that's normal flight, then charges will be 190. Okay.
It's weird because like ticket price
Fixed cost, operational cost per hour. Yeah. Fixed cost, yeah, right? So it's not gonna be direct.
What was your question?
The ratio of scheduled flights or charter.
Just quickly expand how tax and profit and minus tax and charges. Because if we take the tax and profit, this take away the tax rate, tax and profit, and then the profit after tax and profit minus tax.
60%.
Non, le ratio, oui.
No, I think that's
Le ratio de schedule flight. You're right.
Because charter flights calculated based on scheduled flights.
I think they're 2 times 6%. 60% of scheduled flights.
What's your profit for
times charter flights?
99,200.
There's like
Alright.
Whatever amount we get, we have fixed now.
Schedule. I'd rather actually net profit, right? Net profit. We have to take out depreciation. It's not cash flow. This
Purchase price,
I think you multiply
and now
that.
tax 2.33 for that.
I think it's the next batch.
this times
You need to calculate by yourself.
I have the same
Tax, we calculate on this minus 5920, right? This minus this. That's the number of
Et 10 personnes pour l'occupation, pour l'utilisation, pour le moteur. Non, je pense. Ah, mais je pense que ta famille 10, du coup,
Ready for my father? Yeah. The total hours.
Yeah.
Times 6%.
Are you sick? Yeah. They get along.
740 times 10 times 6%. Yeah. Because you have 6 seats.
Okay, makes sense. Merci.
You okay with that? Double check
That's
one over rate. Minus one over rate.
divided by 6.15. Sorry, what? C upon R. 1 minus 1.
They just didn't write this.
Yeah, yeah.
The minus is what the tax on profit is.
Yeah, if you take the R out, then
You understand
it
it?
becomes the same
Then before you leave, like,
Yeah, it becomes the same formula if you take the R out. We do have an R out. Like if you take the R out, it becomes the same
We can't
formula.
tax, so it's a tax benefit, like a tax
R.
shield, right? And then we take, we're trying to find the free cash flow here.
We take them
in this case, would it be the same?
Yes.
1 divided by
You multiply that by the number
Yeah,
of
but why
seats.
is when I do when it minus
They're not.
1.1. Raised to the power of 5. Raised to the power of 5.
Now, potentially we could do already,
5, yeah. I do that.
You know how scenario manager works?
I don't do those because it's like I'll get like a
We don't know the numbers.
So you get this.
So yeah, so basically profit after tax equals profit before tax minus in terms of the cash flow analysis. Okay, so 600,000 is the difference between the cash flow analysis accounting and accounting.
But if I don't have time to grab a
Money.
Have you ever done that? So we can do it in Excel. This is the base case, right? And we create a, because in the case they have a. I just took scenarios. Four numbers we have here. And then Excel gives us the value. For example, says, okay, well, maybe not very true. So in the past, 6%, I believe it might be very, might change, may decrease to 40, right? So utilization, well, the ratio between schedule and charter flights is 40, so we could potentially create it now.
18, so this is the last time I heard about this stuff, so
Base case.
perfect, thank you. That's terminology.
Change.
Wait, because it's been so long that it's like
Operating costs. Parameter.
Yeah, you do data. Yeah, I know. You do data. Data. What if you open up to this scenario? Now we could, for example, go and look. Okay, just the hours. So in the base case, in the worst case, you get really bad 700 hours per year, and it was the old system. So we do 700 in this case, right? 11 today, but charge price per hour.
Yeah, it's gonna be 500 here.
Charge price 1,600 is the base case. Worst case, so we change it to 1,600.
I don't know, I got an email just now. What is it now? I have to check, but I'm gonna say yes.
Well, you can stick it back.
When you get to the 5 year
Right?
120. Reasonable, but
Oh,
Cash is flowing out.
yeah, the first year in this.
Yes, that's deducted when you get the number.
yeah, well,
I don't know why didn't you say whether.
But I'm sure there's a way instead of like doing, I'm sorry, doing probably a way of like it's a very like a distribution weighted.
yeah.
But they didn't give any weights to the probability.
No. So I think it's just
One more minute.
investment is zero, but then you first
give us like scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Worst case, best case, base case.
Yeah.
And then you do scenario.
or technically you should do it at half year. should do it after 6 months. So it'd be like,
That was exactly.
it would be like,
Dividing two things that I didn't know.
it might be
That was
100% wrong,
But I haven't done this for several,
not divided by 2.
Optimization rate.
So
Can
power
you
of half.
really implement that in the formula in Excel?
Like, and normally that's what you're meant to do, but I'm not done it. But I'm getting a negative value and then
I'm so sorry.
Just do the rate sequence.
What worst case
It was better.
You almost got your
You use MP function and you click on that
Okay.
calculus and then you plug it
So
on.
let's talk a little bit how we get to there. And I'm showing you now the solution. We'll talk a little bit about formulas, I think. But before that, let me ask the question. Good. What have you found as NPV? Can I hear some numbers? Minus 64. Any other numbers?
Minus 65.
Minus 64. I hear lots of minus 64. It's probably not coincidence that I hear this. So the answer is indeed minus 64,000. Let me explain briefly how we got there. So basically, these Excel formulas calculate the income from scheduled flights and income from charter flights. These are all fairly basic multiplication: number of seats times hours of the air times of it being scheduled flights, and what is the last one? And seat utilization. And similar income charter flight, operation costs is even simpler, and fixed cost is just a number. And after that, we have the profit after before tax. And there was a little bit an issue, and I think my accounting skills are a little bit old now, rusty. I had this 15 years I learned this stuff, and I've forgotten most of it now. Profit is perhaps not the best word we have used here because there was quite confusion. It's probably more cash before taxes rather than profit before taxes. Someone kindly pointed it out at the back. So, because what we're doing here basically is a cash flow analysis. And now in terms of the taxation, so that is our cash before profit if you want to, so, but we have this depreciation of 120,000, which we deduct to determine how much we are owing to the tax authorities. So you have this 120,000 deduction, and you end up with taxable profit. Here probably the profit is better for accounting purposes, tax purpose, and adds these 33% tax to it. From it, so it's 90,000, and now we jump basically back into the cash flow analysis. It's the cash flow before taxes minus the tax. They are outgoing, we can't keep them, and then we end up as the cash flow after taxes for each of these 5 years. And some of you remembered from a pre-course I've heard in data analytics, which you did for LBS, there is an NPV function, which avoids going so painfully calculating the cash flow for each year. So if you use a trick, it was quite easy to calculate the NPV value. You just need to provide the external funding rate, which is 15%, or outside opportunities, and then repeat the cash flow for each of these 5 years. The key thing to consider is that Excel, when it uses NPV formula, discounts the first, the second, and the fourth year immediately, especially the first one, but cash outflow is in period 0. We don't want to discount it, so you need to deduct the minus 600,000 at the end. Does this make roughly sense? Good. So now we have a number. What does this number tell us about investing? So after you have done this painstaking analysis, happy to invest? Not to invest in this eagle thing? There's enough forces to fly? What do you think? Investing or not investing?
No.
Not right.
This is negative.
Easiest question.
Value is really as much as possible.
Fixed cool, bang, good. Everyone agrees?
Yeah.
Hands up. Don't invest in this thing, it's toxic. Well, would it not be a bit boring if I stop here and let you do all the work and then I say that's all? No. What are we missing here? Elia?
Yeah, the scenarios and the risks involved.
Yes, because these 64,000 they are not guaranteed. And if we add the uncertainty, maybe things will look slightly different. Let's explore that. So the key point I want to make here, never stop just using the base case analysis. You might be on the wrong track. So what we can do is here I already filled out in this sheet. Let me know if it's too small and I can increase the size. I'm not sure. Happy? Happy, good. Get better eyes than me. That's good. So basically, in this Eagle Airlines case, he says the range, for example, the hours flown, depending on economic situation, could range between 700 and 1,000. And we have all these pessimistic values, optimistic values. Why are they helpful? Let's jump to one of the management gurus. Michael Porter. You might have heard him already, famous for his Porter's 5 forces. If it hasn't come up yet, it will at some point in this in your master's course. So, and you find scenarios as discrete, internally consistent views of how the world will look in the future, which can be selected to bound the possible range of outcomes that might occur. That's what we want to do now, a scenario analysis. And now let me jump back, slightly disorganized. I started already talking about what we look at. We first create the perfect storm of how bad things could be. And this is set out in this column. And in Excel, if you are familiar with absolute and relative references, so the dollar sign which appears in some of these formulas, it is easy then to use just the fill handle to automatically calculate the net present value in our pessimistic case. If you don't know what the dollar sign does, we're just looking it up in preparation for the next lecture. And a loss of -1 million. That's pretty bad. And we can do the same thing for the positive scenario where the world is shining on all KPDs in a nice way. And we have a profit of 1.4 million. Okay. What do we do now? We don't really know actually. This basically is not helpful, but it could have been helpful. There can be cases when all scenarios result in a negative NPV or negative profit. If we have done that and all the scenarios point towards this thing is not going to work, we are done with our risk analysis because we have found the answer for our investment question. Do not invest. Similarly, if almost all realistic scenarios signalize this thing is turning out well, we make a profit, we have found our answer, and scenario analysis basically told us where we should go with our money. This is unfortunately not such a case. So, of course it's not, because I want to tell you more tools you can use to analyze this risk in this case. And the next question we could ask ourselves is, okay, we have this huge uncertainty, but where does it come from? What are the KPDs? Which are the KPDs? Which of these KPDs are the culprits explaining why we don't know where we will end up? That can be helpful because sometimes you have a way to elicit more information about the uncertainty. And before going through this exercise, you want to know where this information would be most helpful, or most useful. Because new information often doesn't come for free. So let's do that. And we go, in order to achieve that, we do a sensitivity analysis. What does it mean? The difference between a scenario analysis and sensitivity is the following. In a scenario analysis, we assumed pessimistic world on all KPDs. In a sensitivity analysis, we only assume a pessimistic case for the KPD of interest and leave all the other KPDs at their baseline. We are only interested what is the effect of a single KPD, key performance driver, on our KPI, the net present value in this case. And to do that, Excel has a useful feature which is called data table. Anyone heard of this before? A few, okay. It's a quite niche thing to know about, but it will be useful for this course. And how do we do that? So we can basically, what I want to do now is to do a sensitivity analysis for utilization. We know it ranges between 50% in the best case, in the worst case, and 70% in the best case. And I want to calculate my KPI for all possible scenarios in between, leaving all the other KPDs their baseline. And Excel uses data tables for this purpose. Now, to achieve that, we first need to convey to Excel what do we want to analyze. What is our objective? And we do that in the title of this column here, where we reference basically to our KPI, in this case, the net present value. It's a fairly standardized process, how this data table is being created. I will explain it now first, and afterwards you can try it out yourself to gain a little bit of practice in how to do that. So I said now this is my objective function, KPI, and then I mark the whole table, go to data, and there's something hidden called what-if analysis, data table, and now it asks me a weird question. Row input cell and column input cell. What is it? Basically, Excel wants to know here, what is the KPD I'm varying? Because currently it doesn't know yet. And the first thing to consider is the KPD we are varying is written in a column. Utilization ranging between 50 and 70%, so we need to fill out the column here only. The row stays empty. That are the rules of Excel. And we need to tell which KPD it is. It is C30, the scheduled flight utilization. That is the cell which we are varying in our sensitivity analysis. So we vary this cell C13 and then calculate every time what is the net present value. And okay, and ta-ta, here we are. So the profit or the NPV ranges between minus 323,000 if you're unlucky with utilization 50%, and plus 200,000. Yes, fine.
So what do you mean by what's the full form of KPD?
Okay.
KPD, you've been
Yes, KPD. So there are different ways to call these model parameters. Some call it, as mentioned at the beginning, parameters. Some call them variables. I use here in this course the word KPD standing for key performance drivers, because we have key performance indicators and something must influence those drivers. Yeah, it's a management speak term which is useful to know about. Mathematicians probably wouldn't like it. Okay, so now I have done this for this table. And sometimes I don't want to just vary one KPD at a time, utilization, but perhaps two, because sometimes they have weird interactions. And in this case, I look at utilization and ticket price and create again a data table, slightly different procedure, but almost the same. This time we refer to our objective function, our KPI, at the top left. That is the 5 years net present value, as before. Then we mark this thing. We go again to data, what-if analysis, data table, and we have again the utilization as our column. So we refer again to column input cell is our C13 utilization. However, now we have also a row we vary. In the row, we vary ticket prices. And we need to tell Excel what these numbers refer to, 200 to 300. And we do that by defining the row here, which is ticket prices C12. So that Excel knows what cells it needs to vary. It needs to vary C12, ticket price, and scheduled flight utilization, and calculates the KPI for it. And we see if we vary both at the same time, we can create and keep all the other KPIs at the same level. We can reach a loss of minus $500,000 and a profit of up to 600,000, depending how well we are doing with our two KPIs of interest. Okay. Anyone heard about conditional formatting? Okay. Lorenzo, can you remember how we do that?
No, I can't remember.
Okay, anyone can help Lorenzo? Sorry, picking you.
It's okay.
Anyone can?
This is Lorenzo though. This is Lorenzo. I'm not Lorenzo.
You're not Lorenzo. Oh. Okay. Yes, fine.
Conditional formatting.
Yeah.
You can go on a home tab on the top.
Yeah.
Select it.
Exactly. Home Dublin conditional formatting. Because why do I want to use formatting? These are lots of numbers. It's easy to get confused with all these numbers. It can be sometimes helpful to color codes and so that management can easily read what are the bad and the good scenarios. And you can do conditional formatting. So home button conditional formatting. There are lots of options here. You can play around with that. I, in this case, just want to highlight those cells which make a loss, less than 0. And here we go. Looks prettier. Maybe you find a prettier way to do that. Okay, so now I want you to practice what I have just done. Here we go. And try to replicate. Now, to do that, I will now on Canvas make available the solution for what we have done previously. There is now in Eagle Airlines template 2. With what you can work. So download that and try to replicate. I wrote down the steps here. First, try the 1D data table, follow the instructions here just to get practice. Then the 2D data table. If you have time, have a go with the conditional formatting. We are happy to help if you think it's complicated. And last one, try to draw this as a graph, as a line graph, just to practice a little bit how we can do a sensitivity analysis, display graphically, because management likes graphs more than tables usually. So just have a go with that in the next couple of minutes.
Oh, refresh.
Yeah.
It takes exactly the same set.
But you can
Select on over here, you need to put the value. Data.
Faut juste refaire exactement ce qu'il a fait là. C'est la même.
Moi, ça savait rien. Oui, il faut refaire le truc.
C'est exactement ce qu'il a fait là.
Here you want to jump to from 800 to 700. Did you
Il a fait le. Je me rappelle le sensitivity analysis, c'était sur les.
Exactly the same.
Non, c'est sur les schedules de flight utilization.
Yeah.
Ouais,
The same for every year.
Mais comment je fais là. Comment j'utilise le what if. Ça, j'ai mis ça. Maintenant, regarde.
You guys need
Yes.
Don't you have the same number?
otherwise I was saying
And then it's what if now.
I think I got it. I'm just gonna try.
Table. And there's nothing here.
and then you just call them and you have to sell
And now, because you only have one variable that's in the column, so you stop snitching.
Merci
So, you know how right now?
Tu skis ou tu snow? Ah, on va rigoler.
I only did it after.
It's gonna give you
The gray.
and the ticket price.
On the title, whether it's right? Yeah. Just put the 500 value on that.
Each time you just build the equation.
If you go on the template, if you go on template 2, it's open template 2. Oh, you put highlight everything.
Remember what we did for the last game?
Yeah. Then you do data.
First, you're selecting this cell to tell it what is the end cell that it should do. Basically, this is the
No, the actual reward. Yeah,
that cell.
go up and go up 60%. Go on 60% of the flight utilization.
With these changing variables.
You get to correct this. Yeah, but going otherwise, yeah.
What?
Do you know how to do this, my friend?
What?
Well, I'm going away.
So I do this, I highlight everything. What I put something here?
Yeah, you
There, I have the same one.
no. If you want to hide it, that you look shit. Just go up. Color this.
I like it, I like it. That's a very sexy way you're doing my friend.
First thing that we did.
Maybe.
No, listen, we want to go out and ask you.
Yeah, what time is it?
I'm sorry, I saw it so confusing.
Should I cancel?
Just do the same thing again.
Will I cancel? I will cancel.
Ils avaient fait un fond avant.
I love you. Could we?
I just wanted to let you know that you would have been there.
I love you.
Very happy.
Just
I
And now,
I know the row input. I put right.
Sorry, insert.
just go back to the analysis.
Yeah, it's basically the layout. With the range of values. The range of values.
¡Qué crack! ¡Qué crack! ¡Qué boludo! ¡Qué weapon!
I'm starving, I'm realizing. So I just want to let you know.
That's very sweet.
We might, if the thing is still going, the pups have to or before. We might get a drink at the bar that we and I like.
What's it called?
I keep forgetting, but it's right there. We had proposed it once, we talked about it.
No, you want a really good bar?
Let's go.
Your phone. I'll send it to you on WhatsApp, I'll send it to you. But it's like, it's something you have to keep getting between us. That's all I got. Like a girl saying, okay, whatever.
Ça s'appelle Tunis, H-U-N-I, c'est un jeu de mots, je rappelle Tunis. C'est un
And you don't say anything to them. You
Donc,
say, yeah,
on
just
travaille vachement avec Isaac, et là, j'ai eu un peu de
in case, 'cause you can't just be walking around just pushing books everywhere. See the right book. I think it's that'd be nice. I take Rick back tomorrow night.
Je suis formée, genre j'ai un an et demi, je connais l'industrie bien.
Si tu veux le revendre en entretien, c'est
Tu vois, le rôle de Lisa, c'est exactement. Si tu demandais les minimum, c'est exactement ce que j'ai.
l'entretien est
C'est ça, et je sais, ouais, c'est ça. Je suis pas en train de recracher des facts.
Ouais, voilà.
Je connais pas trop, là, j'étais genre là, genre.
We're not having base cap. 12:30 I'm having a like listen out. Yeah. I'm coming with my friends. Yeah, I've been waiting for 2 years, my whole family. I come here all the time.
I don't know. Mais c'est là, tu vois, j'ai sur des marchés sur lesquels j'aurais jamais dû avoir accès parce qu'elle me fait confiance, qu'elle savait que j'avais bien, que j'ai fait sa stagiaire avant. Et du coup, après, j'ai basculé dans le monde qui elle savait que tu
They call me this. And I'm like, this is
voilà, c'est ça. Et que j'ai pas envie de garder comme si moi je me je regarde aussi les graduate schemes parce que le truc c'est que moi j'ai la parole pendant 2 mois. Donc il y a un moment genre je peux pas passer 2 ans à faire le tour du boîte, tu vois, pour être genre essayer d'accélérer un peu le processus. Non, j'ai fait 9 mois de stage en stratégie du coup avec cette personne-là. J'avais genre un statut, j'ai eu une merde et donc en fait ça a mis 6 mois à se régler. Et donc en fait c'est moi qui suis payée. And I was like, imagine when you were me, if you would literally what it is, change the formulas for your base have the dollar sign or Apple X why not have a letter before the number if you wanted to jump to the number associated that's why I'm quite slow. And if you wanted to have the same c'est que je pense que j'aurais pas approché non yeah and then you can drag it that's why like I could try out in London
I always get these results.
I realized that some of you didn't see this. I was simply to actually upload. You need to refresh Canvas. Then you go it again, then you see what I released. So that fix the result. In this regard, yes. Now here is a solution which I showed before, and lots of numbers, but numbers alone are not helpful to make management decisions. We also need obviously to think about what does it actually mean. And looking at these numbers, I claim they're not all equally likely. The future will not likely to be equally likely in any of these numbers, but there are some which are more likely than others. More specifically, I claim that either those on this ellipse, on the diagonal, are more likely future states of the world. So we are more likely to end up with a low ticket price, low utilization, medium ticket price, medium utilization, high ticket price, high utilization. Or I could also claim the opposite. We are more likely to end up on the green ellipse, so off diagonal, high ticket price, low utilization, medium, and low ticket price, high utilization. Now, one of my two claims is wrong, and one is right. So, using your management hat, which one do you think is more likely? Or which is correct? Are we more likely to end up on the green or on the yellow?
I would say we are more likely to be on the yellow.
Can somebody help out already? Abhi?
The green one, because if the tickets are cheaper, more people are likely to purchase it.
Exactly. So clearly people are price sensitive. If we increase the ticket price, it's less popular, and people might instead go on the bus, train, or go to the competition, and we call that price elasticity. So that's something always to keep in mind when looking at data. Okay, so we put a lot of effort now into sensitivity analysis, but we didn't really make much progress with our original question. Our question was, which of these KPDs we have in our model matter the most among the uncertain ones? So we have 6 KPDs. To answer this question, we need to replicate each of the one-dimensional sensitivity analysis for each of the KPDs. So now this is quite a manual process, and I don't force you to do that because it would spend too much time. So I automatically filled it out here already. So what I did is, we know from our first sensitivity analysis, we might end up for utilization. If you only vary utilization and keep all the other KPDs at their base level, we range between minus 323,000 and 193,000. And that's what I wrote here. In the pessimistic case, for utilization only, it's between minus 323,000 and 193,000. Now I can do the same thing for the other KPDs. For instance, here for hours flown, in the pessimistic scenario, we have not 800, but 700 as number of hours flown. And our KPI value in this case is 160,000. If we change in the base case only one KPD, and we ended up with, and we can do that if we do 1,000, and we end up with 125,000. Okay, and I did this for all the KPDs here. Now, what is interesting is how much does our KPI vary in this case? What's the gap between the pessimistic and the optimistic case, which I calculated as range or simply as a difference between these two? And when we look at it, the biggest difference seems to be for the ticket price per hours, where the range is of possible future outcomes is 646,000. So this seems really to drive our uncertainty a lot. Similar, flight utilization is also quite high. In contrast, yes, operating cost per hour, there is some uncertainty, but it's only 179,000, so far less. So we should focus on our attention when we build our model and make it richer, in principle, on those top ones. And as I said before, graphs are nicer as numbers. There is something called a tornado chart, which I created already here, where I have sorted all the KPDs by the range, starting with the biggest first, and then plotted the pessimistic case. It was the numbers we had in the table for, and the optimistic case on the left and on the right. Did this for all the other KPDs. And here in the middle, where green and yellow meet, green and red meet, that is our base case. So a tornado chart is kind of centered around the base case level. And that's quite useful to have with one view, see immediately what matters and what does not. You might wonder why is this thing called a tornado chart. Think about a real tornado. It's wide in the sky and gets narrower and narrower and a bit twisted. And that's how this graph looks like. Okay, so we have done so far base case analysis, scenario analysis, sensitivity analysis, and time for break. So see you.
Perché?
Assolutamente no.
Perché no?
Yeah, I know.
Ma è bellissimo.
Oh my god. My taste is much better than that.
Un'altra vita.
This entire field, I did that.
I take it. Less than 0, for example. Format is different. Except
我的钥匙呢？
我有个更喜欢的，但我现在如果按个 jump 的话，
钥匙呢？我的钥匙呢？我的钥匙呢？
但是我 jump 那个时候花了很多分
钥匙。钥匙呢？一般你拿手台上我这个钥匙。
I look so dead.
要偷我的钥匙呢？对吧？这个就是交易给他。
我真的没有关系，我没有拿你的钥匙孔，就是他跟我说这是你的钥匙孔，就是放在家里了。然后我才知道，我先把你的手机上面刷上。
不，
能直接吗？
真的没有了。这个钥匙不会还是他们说？
没有被。
第二个手里。
就300。
主要什么？妈的，你的钥匙肯定在你这里，在你这里。
He has his hand.
Really?
Yeah. He just went out.
In real life?
What are you doing? So, 钥匙，这个
I think
这个。那个作业好可怜啊！为什么？一个座位。钥匙啊 ，find out. I think because my 钥匙啊。
不要翻我的包。
It's only 10%.
I don't care. I don't care. And I think if you think about it. 有钥匙，离家出走。
I thought the exam was only like 60%.
Yeah, but I think the exam is
And I was the one who I cared about the number at the end of it. It was the only number I cared about.
it was like the first lecture I looked up, like it's really not worth that much. It's like it's got like extra 9%. It's really good.
我本来准备想，
Most
我
people
本来准备做那个 model，给我一看，
Yeah, we went home with like 7.
Yeah, I know. I'm good with Excel. I'm just trying to do 5% maths points and 5%. Yeah, that's what I'm like.
要死啊！
But it's what's the difference between an A star and an A?
But it's a 12 point. It's a 12 credit.
这里我就不放心啊。
All the other ones, yeah, except for skills success. Apparently that's 12. 12 is good. Like a 12 credit. I have no
That's
idea.
the seminar stuff.
Yeah. All the other ones are 6. Financial accounting is the only 12 we have.
不，
要死啊 preparing for interview Wallpaper is a luxury.
要死呢？什么要死？不
Like
知道啊，你的钥匙在哪里？茶包放这里吧。
Yeah, so it's like a mentorship program.
What?
You can get anyone like Pirates is also there, McLaren, Rolls Royce.
I would
It's
have
a
gone
mentorship program. It's not an internship.
Oh, so you get like mentored across like the year.
Like they choose a mentor for you. But I want to work with this brand. My family business involved in jewelry. So even we do luxury jewelry, but in India, I wouldn't be here. I would pay my way for
你在哪里？
Yeah, yeah.
It's the correct way.
不不不，我听见我那
So
个。
that's why I'm researching about these companies. Because I want to save talk about it tomorrow.
What is in the States? Like we
Buy gold bricks and manufacture them. Like,
Instagram is high. Oh, like for chatting? I mean, as a
I don't know where I heard, but I know the
Yeah, I'm not a social media guy, but I'm pretty sure
I learned them by doing them at work. So from practice.
yeah. You do the nose ring or another thing? Me neither. But if you did,
Exactly.
yeah. No, that's really cool. Yeah, I was literally about to ask if there's any.
yeah, it's been around. I don't know why I can't find any.
So do you own shops as well?
No, we just
Just
manufacture.
manufacture.
We do manufacturing and wholesaling. I want to get into details and that's the real margin.
Right.
I can get out
They do all the markups.
Yeah. And it's the same manufactured. Like we are also manufacturing. We don't have to worry about like getting.
You would have to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good thing. That's why I want to get to the. I hope.
There's gonna be a household.
Crazy. But no, actually, like even this is a huge company. It's
No.
200 euros and does the only like 100 million euros. But I'm contrasting this with Tiffany, which does like 10 billion pounds.
Yeah, but I think it's nice to get from the brand.
Yeah.
It's
I like things that are a little bit different.
But this is quite different from something different. I get those.
Yeah. My dad.
But these automatic.
Yeah.
Show them.
Yeah.
Acquired by McKinsey. Acquired by McKinsey.
No, I think big American firm. He basically like he built it up. He actually he had like very when he left he joined a very small company.
Try.
Then when PwC
Try to do this.
but then he went back and
Excel and preferences.
Wow, that's a
built them up.
Yeah.
Mindset. And then he like sold it to
老板，这个
on the condition that like, he works with them for 5 years to like build up the Euro.
That's exactly the same problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then like I think after 4 years he had a fucking
like it's so different. Like when you sell your company to another company, and so he just like quit. He lost like some like
No, he's just chilling.
yeah, he's like doing a very small like contracting on the side.
What do you want?
Yeah, I want to. I'm really boring. I want to use these strategy consulting.
Did you apply for IB?
But I need an internship.
Yeah, even I'm gonna apply for internship.
Yeah, but then I'm doing full time.
Yeah, exactly. Because like, I'm no shit. I'm not gonna get a banking internship is a good opportunity.
Yeah, literally, it's like the only way to get it is with an internship. Even that's really unlikely.
Yeah.
So, I would like have to be more realistic.
Never been? Yeah, that makes sense.
No, I've only got like tests. Or like, did you do ICC?
Not today. Like, I received an invitation for the. Yeah, after that, I did it.
Still reviewing.
We had this yeah.
But that's if you have submitted it before. I haven't received the testing. How can I complete it?
Yeah, my friend did.
It's a cool name though.
Yeah, he's a Russian cool guy. He's in another stream. But, yeah, he was just the same mission. He hasn't got the test.
Yeah, so I don't think it matters. Any case?
Yeah, I put that in. I was gonna do that this morning, but then I think that's a lot on my calendar.
I got rejected from Bain.
Yes. Dude, but that test was hard. I couldn't understand any of the logic. You know, like the patterns, I couldn't find any. I felt really dumb.
I had a friend helping me who was a baby. Every answer of mine was right. I still didn't do that. I'm 100% certain that all my answers were right.
You have a friend that's been offered the job there?
So it's 8 months.
Okay, yeah, I have a friend that like he's got an offer, but he's not allowed to sign. So I think like they're really like not.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you thinking like
I haven't heard
for the next round?
I haven't heard anyone who got paid first round.
Yeah.
I would be shocked. Whenever see the rejections, I received after 10-15 days.
I missed the deadline.
No way.
But I'm not too bothered because it means like someone else is getting it. Let them get a job there, and I have the other jobs, right?
But it's not like that'll stop them from flying anywhere.
No, I know, but I like the light. make me feel better.
The plan to make it easier.
But yeah, I have no idea. It's just a fire.
Again, it's McKinsey, and second of all, it's London, so.
Yeah.
So then, like, so before that, she didn't. Feel like, yeah. Still thought you would have. That's alright.
I think she looks better now.
But you need to focus like crazy. Like, blink your eye about that, like.
Because when she met me, I was like,
Test.
And now she's talking, and you're not.
There are 12 of them.
Oh,
Same as the black guy who was with the girl, right?
it's like on the like the other.
Yeah.
I got that.
I'm not done I've done that before.
You have to
like the guys convince a girl to go out with you, right?
Like, yeah, you have to take the effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Girls don't really have to make time.
I've worked with them.
So what happens to a guy who doesn't make it?
Yeah, I find it.
Honestly, just
Unless a girl's really fucking nice. Oh, he is gay.
Face.
He's gay, and you don't get up. Well, we don't
Yeah, it
get
depends
up.
what the
When she straight up told me that, and I was
maybe
like,
like
it's
really
really, she will like not be pretty and something.
I don't.
So how I only use like one is that your writing can be improved in your profile overall. So I'm sure that your writing is good, but your profile is not competitive enough. You just straight up said that.
Okay, that's a bit of an overstatement.
That day you were like, no.
No, but you know what? Since then,
You find
no, since that day I've been like analyzing more carefully. And I'm like, okay, actually,
you want to disclose the name, you have to mysteriously.
And I was that's why I said I put China as shit.
oh yeah, really early.
Yeah, they're working very speed. And I wouldn't want to tell them. And I still didn't do you know, and then the other stuff I like. And then one of you.
Yeah, no one else. No one's doing right now. It's not my type, but keep on relearning. Yeah, he's like square.
That's so mean.
So like that's what you guys like right? This is our age. But he's 40, like CTOs. Like obviously they could and he went to like good uni as well. No, it's my age.
I did
My brother's 22.
The youngest one.
Yeah, it's like even more. It's like even more.
I saw actually tomorrow.
Good. Also, like I
I was done with my 20s. I was 15 like that. Yeah, that's like that's crazy.
I mean, I was 18 when I graduated. Like,
Yeah,
that's how it works. Yeah, like I turned 19 when I started.
I was 17.
Kind of mean, but that's impressive.
Okay, see you.
Good luck with you. And I like we had this conversation like the first how long?
Pas comme tout ça.
Ouais, je sais pas.
Ok.
I'm 5'11".
Quoi? Moi, je sais pas. Non, parce que je et même qui ont envoyé genre plein de trucs, genre de plans internes. En vrai, ça a l'air mignon comme ça. C'est genre des activités et tout ça. Genre, je crois qu'ils voulaient faire des biscuits. Je sais pas, une immersive experience, c'est super bizarre, mais sinon
She was really nice.
VR.
Like she really cared about her family. It's like a sense that someone cares about
Elle m'a envoyé ça tout à l'heure. J'ai réfléchi à ça. Et vous dépensez ce qu'on a. On verra. Peut-être que c'est ma vision, ils ont un petit champion direct à faire ça, mais genre au calme de leur part.
Where you going?
Non, en vrai, tu dis toujours genre.
You've never been to Montenegro before, well, I guess. Yeah.
Et c'est aussi
Yeah, because I live 3 hours away by train.
depuis genre le week-end dernier, c'est pas possible, j'ai pas d'énergie. Parce que moi j'ai l'habitude de.
Non, là il fait du tour. Mais non, je sais pas, moi.
Jusqu'à décembre, c'est la merde.
Non, je sais pas.
Yeah, I get it.
Moi en général,
I got it Austin and I got it in the second bid for I mean everything I had left, but I got it for 5,967.
How that panned out for you.
So then I just bid whatever I had left.
Ouais.
un message pour savoir s'il est mort ou pas.
C'est pas exactement le honeymoon face que t'as au début, tu sais. C'est pas exactement le honeymoon face que t'as.
I'll tell you a second.
Et tu vas aller au Disney Vélo.
Moi d'habitude je l'entends bien, ils ont... j'ai l'impression qu'ils ont des groupes de garçons qui font des garçons. Je sais pas, mais à chaque fois je me retrouve avec vous, parler, tu fais des trucs, vous parlez des trucs de pilote,
Oh, that's fine.
Le 14 travail.
You get to spend so much time together.
Non mais c'est un prof.
I feel like if we didn't have that opportunity,
c'est écrit genre 1000 fois.
But I like
Like either in Sammy Offer and Society.
it's not like that. Oh my god. Seriously? Yeah, I know. I saw that. It's saying
Exactly. Not as much as Grand.
Let me get started.
I lived there for.
So what we have done so far is we looked at
You're like, Home Alone. We're gonna watch Home
So what we have done so far is we looked at the KPD values first from the perspective only assuming the base case. Best case scenario, and we calculate our best case KPI. And we at the end concluded that perhaps not enough. What we then did as next step is we looked at the realistic worst case. So we put all the KPDs at a terrible outcome and got a terrible value and get a terrible outcome. It's a perfect storm situation. And then it's the same thing for the perfect scenario, and that we call the scenario analysis, quantifying the range of possible outcomes. And in the sensitivity analysis, we only varied one KPD at a time. Say KPD1, the best and worst case, by leaving KPD2 at the base case. Now, was it helpful? To a degree. But what we haven't got really a handle on so far is what is the likelihood that we end up at any of these KPE values? We're just scenarios. What we really need is somehow a way to calculate the probability. We need a probability calculator, and that is what our simulation tool will now do for us. That's the topic of the second part of this lecture. So what we could do is we have the realistic range, maximum to minimum for all KPDs. Here's only 2. And we could randomly draw lots of scenarios. So for example, I might randomly pick any value in between, say this yellow one, and randomly pick another one here that will be this yellow one. That is one scenario. Can do the same thing for say this green one has a middle value in KPD1 and also some in the middle of KPD2. So random draws, lots of those, and then we can table them and calculate with each randomly generated scenario our KPIs. Let's do that now and see whether it's helpful or not. And for that, we now move to a tool called @risk, which is an Excel plugin, only works on Excel, not Google Spreadsheets, because I got a question about it earlier. And I will initiate that. I will talk later a little bit about how you can get access to risk tools. They come here. So I'm initiating it. So I press on the icon, and starting takes a while to load. It's the fastest tool. And after it finally decided to launch, you see we have a new tab here. There is now something called @risk. And there are a couple of functions available for our simulation analysis, which I will talk about more in this next lecture and also Marius in the seminar. But all what I want to do for now is to repeat in Excel what I just explained on the PowerPoint. So I'm picking here a random value between 700 and 1000 for the first case. And I can do that using an @risk function now. Which is with uniform. So I take uniform distributed value between our pessimistic case and our optimistic case. I think we get a random number and we can have multiple drawers. If I press resimulate, I get different numbers somewhere in between. 700 and 1000. And I can do that for all the KPDs between the pessimistic and the optimistic level. Almost there, get 2 error messages here. What goes wrong? The problem is that the pessimistic case is a higher number here in the last 2 examples. So @risk gets confused because it always expects the first number to be the lower of the 2. I only need to swap that. E and B. And do the same. Okay, so I have here 1 iteration, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different numbers. Every time I get a different value for my KPI, net present value. Can do it long time, but it might be better if you automatize this process. And that's what @risk can do for us. If I press simulate, it now randomly generates 1000 iterations and does the bookkeeping for us. So what you see here for hours flown, 800,000 iterations, and that looks indeed like uniform distribution. It's a little bit wrecked here because it is a simulation, only 1000 iterations. it is not the perfect straight line. If you do 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000,000 iterations, it will be practically flat. And the same happens for all the other KPDs, key performance drivers. Now, given that all these are normally distributed, these uncertain KPD, not normal, uniform distributed, these are uncertain KPDs, what do you think will be the shape of the distribution of the net present value in this case, our KPI? Do you think the shape will be a circle, an oval, a square, dot, an ellipse, a bell, triangle? What do you think? If I simulate that, what do you think is the distribution of the net present value? Any thoughts? Anyone? Yeah, cautiously you're looking at?
Yeah, a ghost line, like this.
A bell,
A bell line.
yeah, a bell curve. Why do you think it's a bell curve? Because these are all squares. So why do you think it suddenly becomes not a square?
Because, no, just intuition, I'd say.
She's correct. Why is she correct? Okay, now.
Central limit theorem, that I guess the averages or the sample averages will tend towards a normal distribution.
How many observations do we have?
1,000.
No. In this case, not. We have only 6. Why 6? Yes, exactly. We have 6 KPDs, and what happens basically, central limit theorem to a degree. What basically happens, they are all independent from each other. So usually you won't be unlucky every time and have a pessimistic value here, 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 and here. That's quite unlikely. Sometimes they are positive, sometimes they're negative. It balance each other out to a degree. And that's why we indeed end up with a bell shape. Let me show you how exactly it looks like. Similar like with the data table, we first need to tell Excel what is our KPI we want to analyze. So I need to press mark cell B28 and press output. Just confirm that's my output. Not a little thing added to it. Don't worry about that. It's just an at-risk stuff. And now we simulate. And we have indeed a bell-shaped diversification, not quite as extreme as in our opening example, but a little bit wider. And what do we find? First of all, we see that this is the curve, and on the right you see lots of statistics which are helpful. The most useful one is probably the mean, the expected value, which is in our simulation now 166,444. And you might also, in finance, we usually want to have a number for the average expected return and for the risk, where often standard deviation is a nice one. And we see here also standard deviation is 299,811. The first thing we observe here is we seem to have changed our opinion about whether investing in this airline or not. Suddenly the NPV is positive, and I guess most of you would suddenly decide, let's do that. What we basically added to this model is now additional information. We added information about the uncertainty, as someone on this side mentioned it earlier. We made it better. But we can go further. So, looking at this model, so what we have done so far, would you change something else? Do you think we can improve this model? The KPD, things in models the right way captured. We use a different distribution. Are you happy with that? What do you think? Is it realistic? Remember, the whole purpose of modeling is try to capture the reality of our business decision as good as possible without making it too complicated. Happy with the uniform distribution.
two hands on the other side.
Oh, thank you. That is for blinding me. No, I don't think I mentioned Sebastian. Okay.
Yeah, so you basically mentioned yourself, right, as you were searching for hands, but I don't think it's a fair assumption to assume uniform distribution for all the variables. Because then you're assuming it's equally likely that you end up at each of the edge cases as opposed to closer to the base case, which I assume is more likely than these very high or very low values. So I would probably do a normal distribution.
Yeah, you're right. This is a bit, we are usually not anywhere close to the extreme cases. Uniform distribution is an option. Normal distribution is an option, but there are other ones. Let me explain a little bit more about distributions. So, let's pick this first statement I picked from the case. It says, Keith hoped to be able to fly 1,000 hours per year, but realized that 800 might be more realistic. Lower case, so best case scenario, if things get really hard, 7 hours was a possibility. Also remote. Now, normal distribution, I have a problem here with normal distribution. Anyone sees what the problem is? It's usually, yeah.
Because if it would be normal distribution, you want to find maybe not hours.
850. I think that you basically it's not symmetric. That's the point you are. It is not symmetric. So a normal distribution would create us troubles. We cannot dispute normal distribution, but that is pretty complicated stuff. We don't get that far. Or the other section someone suggested the Poisson distribution. Why not? No, we are here in the world of modeling for managers, and keep things simple. You simply draw a triangle. So a triangle distribution can capture this situation quite well. So we have the worst case and the best case on the left and the right, and the most likely scenario is somewhere around the 800. It's the mode. So that is a useful thing in order to communicate uncertainty and distributions to managers. Because none of the problems in normal distribution doesn't have a limit. You can go to plus minus infinity. You can have negative hours flown, which is hard to convey to managers. It is possible. So this is a nice thing to have. And that is how the at risk command looks like. So risk triangular minimum point, most likely point, max point. And I add that now to our model. So what I do now is I replace the number of hours flown with triangular distribution, ranging from the pessimistic case, best case, optimistic case, the three edges of a triangle. Okay. Now, the thing with a triangular distribution looks simple, but there is no single real-world phenomenon in the world which follows a triangular distribution. It is just a crouch to make things easy in modeling. And that's fine, because models are about making things manageable, understanding the world in a simple way. However, we suggested sometimes we are better off with a normal distribution. And that is for this statement perhaps the case. It says, Key's best estimate for operating cost was $1,200 per hour. However, this could be wrong by 50 in either direction, mainly depending on fuel prices. So that's symmetric now. Okay, now we need parameters for our normal distribution. And I know you talked a lot about normal stuff in data analytics, especially in regression modeling. So the mean is 1,200. What do you think is the standard deviation of this when we're looking at this text? It has something to do with the 50. But what do you think is our parameter for the uncertainty? Any ideas? Oh, yes. It's a hard question. Let's see what we come up with.
Should we take 1,200 minus 50 plus 50?
Yes.
Figure out the uncertainty range.
Yes, so you think basically it's quite likely that we end up somewhere between 1,150 and 1,250.
Yeah.
And with normal distribution, we usually say what is likely anything in the 95% confidence interval. So we now know that the 95% confidence interval ranges between 1,150 and 1,250.
Yeah, but then we'll have to do that calculation as well, like assuming that 5% is the significance level.
Yeah, we assume basically in 5% of the cases you will be outside of this range between 1,150 to and I need the parameters of standard deviation. How do we get that? Yeah.
It's a question about the because you're on the
Just looking.
So that's what in that case the standard deviation
25.
yeah, so that's total the two standard deviations are 50.
Two standard deviations are 50, exactly. One standard deviation is 25.
Yeah, so it's not 50. It's 50 total.
Let's pause that. So normal distribution. We know our mean is 1,200, and we have already declared we are most likely anywhere between 1,150 and 1,250. So we agree on that. And now from the normal distribution, when we say this area in between is 95% of all possible outcomes. So now remember the normal distribution. This area is within plus minus 2 standard deviations.
You just use your
Oh yes, yeah, I think here as well. It's better now? Sorry for that. So we have here plus 2 standard deviation, or to be precise 1.96, but it's modeling, we don't bother too much about those details. Minus 2 standard deviations. Questions?
Yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but this is only one standard deviation, right? What you've drawn now. It's 50, right?
50 is 50 is 2 standard deviations because we are
okay.
in the 95% range.
Okay.
So this is 2 standard deviations in either direction. So in conclusion, 1 standard deviation is half of it, 25. Can you follow? Yeah, that's everything. So we have now figured out Z is our distribution with normal, and I'm adding this now to Excel. So operating costs per hours are now risk normal between 1,200 our mean and painstakingly figured out the standard deviation is 25. Difficult stuff, I know. Okay, this and here's what I explained just in words, so that you can look it up later. And the last distribution we already talked about is the uniform distribution. When do we use the uniform distribution? Well, it's probably the case we don't know anything. We have really no idea. We know a maximum, a minimum, but what happens in between. The most neutral statement is probably all equally likely. So that it's a situation with very, very little information. Can happen sometimes. It says here in the text the chartered price is uniform distribution. It just assumes that's what Keyes really believes. Remember, modeling is asking managers their judgment about the world, and Keyes is the expert. If he says could be anything between, we believe Keyes. Okay, now as I said before, when you look at the at risk tab, there are lots of distributions available. You can model in. Anyway, let's not do that. But we only look at these three. It's only an introductory course. And let me now assume for all the things we haven't discussed so far, we have a triangular distribution. So let's find now a triangular distribution for ticket price per hour. Scheduled flight utilization also triangular distributed. Ratio of scheduled flights to chartered flight. Triangular distribution, same problem as before. It asks us to start first with the lowest number, which is the optimistic case in this case, and the highest number on the other side. Okay. Now I added all these new distributions. What do you think happens with our MPV distribution? So with what we really want to model. After we replace the uniform distribution with triangular and normal distributions for almost all of these. Specifically, what do you think happens with the uncertainty after we updated our KPD? Do you think the uncertainty will becomes bigger when we added this information, or smaller? Will the standard deviation go up or down? What do you think? There at the back.
I would think down, because you've increased the likelihood of you've increased the probability of any of these one variables being in the center of its distribution.
Exactly, easy. So basically, if we reduce the probabilities that we end up at the extreme end with the KPDs, we probably are also less likely to end up at the extreme ends of our KPI. Correct observation. Let's verify that. We're running now the simulation model. Press simulate with 1000 iterations. And here we are. We have now a mean of 1450, 145351. The mean changed slightly a bit. Why? Because we added information. I couldn't predict in which direction it goes, but for the standard deviation, we could predict that. And indeed, it goes down to 254, 365. Okay. We can make the models a little bit more complicated. Yep.
Sorry, I missed the connection point. Why does the triangle mean we're less in the tails? For the standard deviation? I just thought the shape would mean that we're more further away from the mean.
If you want to get further away, then you would need, if our KPD, any of the KPDs, let's take ticket price because it's a private one. Assume you have a distribution like this one. Completely odd distribution, I know. So that is a minimum and maximum. And you're most likely ending up at the extreme values, either there or there. In this case, our uncertainty for our KPI also would go up. Because if we are an extreme value for ticket price, we probably end up with extreme value for our profit as well. We end up either there. However, the triangle distribution is more or less the opposite. It looks like this here. So we are most likely somewhere in the middle for our KPD. And as a result, we are probably also most likely in the middle for our KPI. Think about how things in Excel, how things get calculated. You assume a value for your KPD, and then you go all the Excel formulas until you reach your value for the KPI. The distribution of the KPDs determines the distribution of the KPIs. Yeah, I know, it takes a while to digest. You will get there, especially given that we will do more of those exercises in session 2, and with practice, one can get some intuition how models work. And that's really what I'm trying to explain here. Not just look at the numbers, but also where do they come from and what do they do for us as managers. Okay. So now, this. One last thing. I asked you previously, what do you think is the correlation between ticket price and utilization? And you correctly concluded it is negative correlated. And I would like to add this information to our model. Currently, I assume that ticket price is triangle distributed and utilization is triangle distributed, but they are independent of each other. But they are not. So in order to tell our model that they are negatively correlated, it will ask for a correlation coefficient. And you will remember from the data analytics course, or maybe the finance course, they're all quite linked in this for lecture 1, is a correlation coefficient can range from -1, perfect negative correlation. If one goes up, the other variable goes down, to +1, perfect positive correlation. If one goes up, the other goes up too. And in the middle, if we have a correlation coefficient of 0, if one goes up, what do we know about the other variable?
No change. We don't know.
We don't know anything. Yes, we are completely ignored. So, and for correlation coefficients, there are 2 components to it: the sign of the correlation coefficient and the magnitude. Let's start with the sign. The sign is easy. It's basically written here: negative correlation. We found out the first one. The magnitude is a little bit more involved. And for that, it is helpful to go again back to the data analytics course where you discussed a thing called simple regression analysis. Remember this formula? It was y equals beta 1 to beta 0, our parameter constant, plus beta 1 x. Simple regression model. And what we did then basically is to answer how well does x predict y. And usually one thing you discussed in this module was called the goodness of fit measure. We talked about the R square. Remember? What did the R square tell us?
Yeah, it's the explanatory power of our model.
Exactly, and it can range from 0%, that means x explains us nothing about the variation of y, to 100%. If we know x and is constant, then we are sure to know y as well. And I say now that ticket price is a quite key thing that determines our utilization. And I'll now make up a number, like usual in our modeling. I claim now the ticket price explains 75% of our utilization. What explains 75% why we end up anywhere here in this range. That is just a judgment call, but perhaps it's realistic, especially if we don't have any data here. Okay, if I make this assumption, there is something neat here about this R square. Because what does R stand for? If we have a simple linear regression, R is simply the correlation coefficient between x and y. So what we have figured out is if we make a statement, ticket price explains 75% of our explanation of our utilization, that is equivalent to saying that our correlation coefficient is square root of 0.75, which is equivalent of 0.87. So once I have determined how much does the ticket price explain utilization, I can calculate our correlation coefficient simply as a square. One problem still, can anyone see it? Remember math, when you take square roots, what was the thing your teachers told you, be careful about?
The roots can be both positive and negative.
Exactly, they can be both positive or negative. Can they? In our case? In our case, we know the answer. It could be any of them mathematically, but we already know they are negative correlated, so we can forget about this positive number, and that is our correlation coefficient, minus 0.87. Tricky stuff. I know it's complicated. I described here a little, again, a bit more detail how we arrived at that. It is probably not what, if you don't understand it, it was a bit too complicated, that's okay. It won't stop you from getting good marks in this course. So, but I think it's useful to know and might come handy at some point. Okay. So let's update our model with this new information we gathered.
You said here we know that the correlation is negative, right? Because we looked at the, or we assumed and yeah, we made it.
Yeah.
But how do we know otherwise? Yeah.
Yeah, Keith knows. What we do with modeling is try to make assumptions. That's the guy, yes, from the president of Eagles Airlines. We make assumptions. That's Keith, yes. This Keith. We make assumptions. Now, maybe you talk to an economist, and the economist tells you it could be actually positive. And in fact, if you talk to a very clever economist, it makes the argument it should be positive. I won't go into that, but if anyone wondering why this thing is not positive, they have probably a good point. But let's not make it too complicated, this course. Assume it's negative, because Keith said so. Okay. I'm adding now that we haven't calculated, that we have calculated the correlation coefficient, I'm adding it now to our model. So I explained the steps now, but you will then see in the solution written down how I got there, so don't worry about remembering what I'm doing now. Okay, so I want to add correlation coefficient between ticket price per hour and scheduled utilization. And I can do that, there is a button called correlation. If I press it, it just confirms that I want to have the correlation between these two variables, or KPDs. And then comes this field. First of all, it asks me to give this thing a name, utilization, ticket price, or whatever, doesn't really matter as much, just needs to be one name, no hyphens, no spaces. And then it asks me to fill out this table. This is called a correlation matrix. And it is, you see, B12, B12s that are the same cells here. So it's, you see, this is ticket price, and this is ticket price here, and this is scheduled flight utilization, that's the same variable, scheduled flight utilization. And it already has filled out this number 1 here. Why? Because the ticket price is, of course, perfectly correlated to the ticket price. Because the ticket price goes up, the ticket price goes up. The same thing is for scheduled flight utilization. If it goes down, of course, it goes down. So that's perfect positive. The only number we really need to determine is at the bottom left. The correlation between scheduled flight utilization, that's B13, and ticket price. And we type in our painstakingly obtained number minus 0.87. And suddenly we have a choice. It appears here and here. Why is that? Because correlation is symmetric. If x is positively correlated to y, y is also positively correlated to x. So the only number you need to worry about in this matrix is the one at the bottom left. Now I need to tell Excel where to save this new information, just pick a random space and press OK. Here it is, minus 0.87. And if you want to change it later because he's changed his mind, you can just update it here easily. Okay, now let me go back to the same question I asked before. Now that I added the negative correlation between the ticket price and the utilization to our model, what do you think happens with the uncertainty, specifically the standard deviation of our distribution of the KPI, net present value? Do you think our bell-shaped curve gets narrower, even more narrow, or now widens again after we added a negative correlation between two KPDs? Or more specifically, does the standard deviation go down or up? Any thoughts? Remember CAPM? There was something the betas, which matter a lot. If we like the negative betas, what happened if we had negative betas between stocks with our portfolio risk? Did it go down? I think it did. And what happened with our model, Melanie?
So, this is kind of like hedging, like you said. So, if ticket prices go up or utilization goes down, or the other way around, so because that the standard deviation comes down.
Yes, so basically balance each out in a way. And let's verify that. That's the correct description. Simulate this thing again. 1,000 types. The mean remains practically the same, 136 it is now. Changed a little bit. I don't know why. The mean is now 136, 529. Blocked. I have no idea how that happened, what this means. I never had this before. Don't ask me, but you luckily got almost to the end. Let me simulate it here. That's the solution. So we end up now with a standard deviation of around 218. It indeed got smaller. Okay. Now, this is our final histogram. That's our uncertainty distribution. We are done for this case. There's one useful thing still to show is we talked previously about a tornado chart to identify which of these KPD matters most, and risk has also a version of it. When we press it at the bottom left, it's shown in the slides, the button exactly, we can pick a tornado chart as output. And here we are. That is the variables which matter most in our simulation. Charted price per hour is at the top, but now suddenly ticket price and scheduled flight utilization, which were the two key ones previously in our first sensitivity analysis, don't seem to matter much anymore. Why does ticket price and scheduled flight utilization not matter anymore? Any thoughts? Why do they have suddenly such a small range? Or explains a little of our KPI, net present value? Any ideas? We don't do regression analysis here, but you go in the right direction. What you mentioned is correlation coefficient. Yes, which is related. These two variables related. Basically, if the ticket price is high, then we know the utilization will probably low. So the positive effect of the high ticket price is subsumed partially by the scheduled flight utilization. So we don't need to worry too much about one thing because they compensate each other. Exactly. That explains why our tornado chart looks so much different once we added the correlation coefficient.
Yeah, just a small question. Why the scheduled flight utilization is a red bar in the middle of the line? Like, why didn't it have also the separation blue, red, and the middle on the bar in the middle?
Here, because here, the base case was my personal opinion is these coloring in two different versions it doesn't really tell me much anyway. I usually just color them in one color anyway. So yeah, good question. No idea. So, okay, so I'm almost to wrap up. So here's kind of a little bit explanation. Marius will tell you more about that. This. But we haven't talked about the crucial thing so far. We haven't really talked about what is actually risk. We talked the whole time about risk, and even a software tool called At Risk. What is risk? You probably could speculate, but it's actually not quite so easy to come up with a good definition. So it's helpful to think it as a two-dimensional thing. It is a combination of the likelihood of an event being adverse and the severity of the adverse event, of this adverse event. So it's a combination of the two. And we often display that in risk factors. Something like this. There we have the likelihood of each risky event happening, ranging between very unlikely, very likely, and the impact, ranging between negligible and severe. And now, what does it mean very unlikely and very likely? It depends on the context. If you are a nuclear power plant operator, then very likely if this thing blows up once every 100 years, it's pretty bad, no? Whereas if you are a football club, if you kind of get relegated once every 100 years, it is probably a more likely thing. So that is subjective, depends on the context, and of course, the impact is also depends on the decision context. But the key point I want to make here is these risk tables, risk metrics, you will see very frequently once you start working in the management world. They use a different term for it, they call them the REC rating. Red, amber, green. What we have done here, the risky situations where we have, they are very unlikely and the impact is quite small. The management says, don't bother too much about it, it's not worth your time or effort. If you have those which have a severe impact and are very likely, management will say, can we do something to reduce this risk? I'm really worried about that. That's where all the attention goes to, and then you have the yellow one, the amber one in the middle. You should think about it, if you can. Okay, so that's the definition of risk, and it somehow features also in our histogram, which we created for our Eagle Airlines. It's also two dimensions. One is the severity, that is the horizontal axis. How much loss do we make? That's a different possible outcomes. And the likelihood is determined by the height of these outcomes. So again, two dimensions, risk. Now, one thing about risk analysis is always a bit dissatisfactory, but it is the nature of the beast. We did all these analysis and came up with this graph. What did we do? Does the graph tell us what to do? Oh, you want to say something? Good. It was a rhetorical question, but answer please.
Sorry. I mean, the graph tells us what we should expect as like a net present value for the investment.
Exactly how it's distributed, but it doesn't tell us really if we invest or not in these things.
No, but then what we can expect is that can inform decision making of decision makers.
I like this. Inform the decision, I use the same word. Models can only inform decisions, but they cannot make them for us. Because our decision depends on our risk attitude. If we are very risk averse, don't have much money in the bank anymore, there's concern if Eagle Airlines has a net present value of minus 200,000, the creditors will knock at the door at some point and say bankruptcy is a concern. They probably don't buy the first plane. On the other hand, if Eagle Airlines wants to create an Eagle empire of lots of planes and they need money for it, they wouldn't even go for it if the net present value is negative, because where they want to be is somewhere in this area, because it allows them to buy new planes even if it's a risky thing. Gamblers in this case. Yeah. So, okay. Let's now summarize. So what we have done so far is we have started with a simple base case analysis, and then we make things more complicated. We then added scenario analysis, what's the range of possible outcomes, and because we have figured out they can be both positive or negative, we went further with our analysis. Determined which of these KPD really matters, and then we did the probability calculator for a simulation analysis. So then use the simulation analysis. First, we placed the uniform distribution with normal and triangular distribution, then added correlation coefficients. Could we go further? Yes, of course. We can make this model more and more complicated. For example, the costs, the fixed cost and the variable costs are probably positively correlated with each other because there's one driver, inflation. It will go both up if inflation is high. And maybe it's not a normal distribution, maybe it's a little bit more difficult. So we can add more and more to the model. The question is, when do we stop with this? And the answer is, we stop once we have figured out what to do. That is what modeling really for. So with Eagle Airlines, Keith might have at the beginning a hunch. What is the right decision, invest or not? His intuition might say, for instance, he should not invest. The model does lots of things, and the model says it's been invest. So he has intuition on one hand, and his model on the other hand. Does he know what to do? Not really. One of them could be wrong. Which one is wrong? It could be that the modeling helped him to better understand the real world. That's what we hope for. But it could be also that his intuition helped him to realize something is wrong with the model. Perhaps Keith has forgotten an important risk factor, and once he added this additional KPD to the model, he realized actually the model also produces a worse NPV. So what basically one needs to have in modeling and risk analysis, the intuition, manager's opinion, and the model need to have a chat with each other. And only once they agree with each other, we are reached at a point that the model helped us to understand the real world business decision to an extent that we know what decision to take. At that point, we can stop. We don't need to add more stuff to the model because we know what we want to do. That's it basically for today. There will be a seminar on Thursday, time still to be determined. I haven't heard back yet, and on Friday definitely. And that will be an at-risk analysis. The case will explain step by step how you can implement the model for Novaduct in this case. I would like you to try it out before the seminar. Then Marius will go through it and do some troubleshooting. Charlotte.
Sorry, is the tutorial tomorrow not at 8:45? We have it in our time.
8? You're stream C.
Stream A.
Oh dear. You have it tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow morning at 8:45 or Friday at 1.
This is pretty terrible timing. I have to do a night shift and do all these stuff. That definitely needs to change tomorrow, or you simply hope that Marius can guide you to the solution. Let's all.
Charlot. Pierre, c'est beau, Charlot.
It might be helpful actually. I think I'm not involved in the scheduling of this tutorial.
We don't have time to prepare if it's tomorrow.
Ieri sia obbligatorio.
Maybe let's try to reschedule tomorrow if there's no point, because you won't even be able to have installed at risk at that point, which is, thank you for pointing it out. Going to another point at risk.
Just saying he's gonna reschedule, he won't be able to.
Yeah.
I want to sound rude.
My screen is somehow disappeared. I wanted to show you something, but it's not there. But can you see in the PowerPoint that was on slide 17 or something, there were a couple of links. If you are a Windows user, which don't seem to be that many here, those of you are the lucky ones, because Swift only works on Windows. Yes. So you can just follow the instructions, click on it, install. Now we haven't forgot about the Apple users. You need to probably use a remote login. So there is a link on the web on the PowerPoint slide. It's the third link, the second link. You need to open it and ask for access. Then IT, once they are happy with you, will grant it. I will make sure that we will grant it for you all tomorrow morning. I will write a reminder for that. And once it's granted, you can have a remote login access for Equid. Alternatively, you can also, of course, go to Computer Lab and just log in anywhere there. They use Windows here, and you can use it there. Okay, that is this point. And the second point is homework graded, which is due by next Tuesday. And you will also need to use at risk. It will be on the assignment tab in Canva. So please submit that by Tuesday. I apologize for this issue with the seminar. I should have known about it, but I did not. And we saw it out. But if anything, you can come up on Fridays. It will be simply a little bit live. Okay. Thank you very
I will add like quizzes.
Multiple things. Case studies.
I'm sleeping tonight because I'm feeling very tired. Like 9:45. But Danny bro, tell my favorite Italian. He knows.
See ya tomorrow.
Andrea Locatelli, I like him, but I haven't seen him. I don't know him over there.
You go.
很好用，但我最近没有时间看，所以我今晚 MA 估计又得 take longer。哇哦，帅哥，你要去 dating 吗 ？OK，
没有了，要那个。
这要成瘾。
我还要去健身。
你要有空的话，自己
好难，会做。
ChatGPT 了。
或者你要下那 activist。
我也没听懂，我也没听懂。
Why don't you ask her to find
教什么？我完全不知道他的，就我不知道他这节课想让我们学会什么。我的 Excel 吗？我说完蛋了，我这 Excel 都不会用，我说真的，我这 Excel 完全不会用。怎么样？领导，对领导人。
不是。
哎，你懂然后今天然后
But this is valuable.
This is what I thought.
可能只剩下2个，就我管你穿个衣服好配。
但是我现在说的痒了，那痒，能不能 It's upstairs in Paris.
The only issue is you always like it. How much that address cost? Maybe like $15 a month or something.
There's a free Excel version also. The Analysis 2 pack does the same. That's free. So you wouldn't have to. And risk I think is also free.
Oh really? Because you know what I mean. My company doesn't provide it, and you don't have. I mean, you want to have some kind of.
There's something called the Analysis 2 pack. Just go into options and edit. That's right. And then you would have. You need to learn to use that, but I think.
Copy the tuition.
Nothing is more than a Google search away.
Yeah. Like it? Josh, you like it? Yeah.
已经困，我在前面一直。
我真的我也好困，这个点不上去。
加油，明天冲！
提醒我一下，提醒我一下。
好，自己想。
你们去 KFC 吗？我要去麦当劳。哦，
顺路。对 ，KFC 的炸鸡真的很不错。
今天有那个1磅的。
1磅吗？讲。还是需要上2磅。
0.99那个 Big Mac。
是吗？
好吃还很厚，然后2层肉呢。
不是，是不是得下 app 呀？
对对对，是的。
那我现在下个。
Because you have them. For example, think about data analysis all the data analysis on the level. You might have studied biology and realized you like numbers and data analysis. So I'm working at BNS. When you see they have problems and analysis, so
why?
you can take it.
这次是星座的差不多。
Okay, so yeah, it is, yeah, topic wise.
你怎么还有一包影片？
哪两包？
你是在做柜子吗？还是先吃饭？
不知道哎。做柜子吧。18块钱，哇。
我晚上要做柜子，我想要怎么排？我做 OT，我要做罗拉贝的 OT， 然后要做PPT OT 的话无法处理做，因为是那个青年要做。或者我们学一下福利那个 CEO， 因为这是有答案的，比较晚，就是一个敲题。谁的课？这不是我们家的，拿着吧。
Is there an event happening still later today?
Yeah.
When does it start? So
Hey, I think
7 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay, so I can go tomorrow.
Your bag, just seeing here in the chair. Maybe you could text him or.
Testing 1, 2, and 2.
Yeah. Right.
Testing.
In the class or
Testing.
Right now? Or do you want me to? I could bring it to security.
Testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
Alright, yes, just so the security is there.
1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2.
Of course. Bye bye. Enjoy.
Testing, testing. 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 1, 2, and 2. Testing, testing. 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2. 1, 1, 1. 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2.
Hello.
Hi.
Good. Well, day's always good when I see you. I wonder if I left my. No, it's not here. Okay. Oh, yes, it is. Here it is.
Oh,
Okay.
Test, test, test. Test, test, test. 1, 1, 1. 1, 1, 1. This might almost be too loud, this one.
Yeah.
It's like
Logging account.
feeding back. Yeah, see how it's there. Sometimes it keeps getting onto this like second screen only setting, so
Might need to log on.
from log on.
Oh, right,
That
yes.
way, and then
Yeah, seems to have done that.
Can you do it all caps lock or you've got caps lock on?
Yeah. Okay, now it's off.
Hi.
Hello. It's always sort of disorienting.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So first, yeah, if we put on duplicate, yeah, I think this is why it keeps doing it. 'Cause it keeps going on to second screen only, so it's like.
When you push do it, it's control.
Windows P.
Okay, Windows P.
Yeah.
I'll probably forget that, but I will try to remember.
Testing, 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 testing. 1, 2, and 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
Yeah, come on in.
1, 1, 1, 1, 2, and 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2, and 2. Testing 1. Testing 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2, and 2. Testing, testing. Testing, 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 testing. Testing, 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 testing. 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2, and 2. Testing, testing. Testing, 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 testing. Testing, 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 test, testing, test, testing. Testing, 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 testing. 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2. Test, test, test. 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2. Testing, testing. Test, test, test. Testing, testing. One, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2. Hello, hello.
So, a couple of things. Just how do we make like a view? Full screen mode? Yeah. And then does the clicker work with this?
Yeah. Shall I take away the pen for annotation as
Yes,
well?
please.
Yeah.
Drop-off rate, LBS. Perfect, seems like it's recording. Is there a way to send it to or?
Oh
share
yeah,
it on
I
the-
did. I was gonna, we're gonna record it at Zoom as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if you could
Yeah.
send me the link, I would.
Yeah. So if we set up a media site recording, but if we don't, yeah, we record this one as well.
Recording in progress.
And how do I wanted to share the presentation?
And then share to meeting, and then content only on both.
And where would what would be the link to it?
Yeah, if anyone wants to join, that's. Yeah, I mean, we could also you can send an invite to yourself as well, and then we can and you can kind of paste that.
My Gmail because otherwise I can't copy and paste anything in my lambda.edu. Perfect. Okay. I'll go and check if speakers here.
Testing. 1, 2, and 2. That's not so good. Testing.
Hi, how are you?
1, 2, and 2. Testing. Okay, we go. LT1, 11th month, 1st of 2023, 10 minutes to 7. Display your chosen sources and send it to Zoom.
seats on those buildings? I don't know how small the text is.
That is a very bad one.
How are you?
Good, are you?
Good, thank you.
I have the army. Oh, no, it's Australia.
It's a city in Australia, so my
Yeah,
mum
yeah, I
visited
got it,
it.
yeah. Do they have hot water or just cold?
Huh?
Or only cold water is always?
Feels pretty cold, yeah.
Everywhere in UK or only in London there is cold, like they don't have like warm water in the water dispensers?
I know, I'm gonna try and put that next one so that it can warm up. I really hate cold water at home.
I hate cold water and I, like, it's only country, it's the first time when I go to warm water.
I think most people do. In the States, I always have to specify no ice, no
Yeah, yeah, I think Germany. Which classes do you choose?
I've got, it was such a mix. I have a bunch of the tailored core, all the 6 credit ones. I didn't manage to get business analytics. Change management, pricing, global economic. I do do entrepreneurship.
I'm good. How are you? Are you a student? No. So the event about to hear this.
Yes.
And I was consulted.
No.
So I consulted. Oh, in the corporate development.
I tried for a bunch of electives, but so I might see the actual, not on, but I don't know. If you could do one, then.
Yeah, I was choosing from each
You
one.
were 4, you found, or you finish early?
Yeah, yes, yeah. And majority, but also some of them should go
Okay,
stuff
okay.
like this. Yeah, yes. The economy there is really big up.
No, that makes sense.
Kind of keep it more relaxed and
How long have you been studying?
That makes sense.
So the course is for how long?
Lots of classes though, you're gonna be revisiting.
Actually, I don't have more than 3 days of studying.
Really?
Oh,
did you have a bunch of
I have 2 topics.
Oh, okay.
How long have you been working? working.
No, it's November. How did you do that?
For quite a few years.
Oh my god. No, I've been frantically like trying to keep a track of like. Wow, that was like what? Yeah, I was like doing it on my own. You can even do it before you get there. Yeah, and they don't stack up in there, and it was driving me nuts.
So in January, I have twice a week classes, so not so bad. February, just 2 classes.
Are you doing languages?
I've done sign up for a language class, so I left that slot open.
So
is this the lecturer or the invite from external? No. So
It doesn't really matter. Like, everyone's passed, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you're trying to argue that your essay was the best in the world, like.
No.
Yeah.
This is sort of his name, yeah. Big names, I know. Startups.
And I'll go to you really ever the first 4 or 5 years? I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you have to now remove the stuff.
Alan and over.
You can go to Shul. No, if you go to Shul, to Marshall
Play for chance.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if you don't need them anymore, if you don't have them added, you can just remove them. Unless you want to always add them and drop around.
Yeah, there's some that I like to
keep,
but like
the street, the big four.
Yeah.
Equal to the.
For example, this is zeros. So
yeah.
Oh, you have a little.
I just went through and did everything.
130 full time.
60.
Is around 500 from the crash rate. So many. It's a graduate school.
Oh, yeah, you have structure.
Master of intuition.
Yeah. Well, I just kind of put down everything and then I was like